Player Pop Cult fan here. I apologize. My previous recording kind of paused because the camera app crashed on me. So I'm gonna have to re-record this video. So sorry about that. I'm gonna have to start this review over again. But yeah, Pokemon Sword and Shield. I want to review that game, so I'm gonna give my thoughts on it. Hopefully the app doesn't crash on me again. So yeah, Pokemon Sword and Shield, I think they're decent games, but at the same time, the story is kind of lackluster. In my previous recording, I was talking about the main human villain and how his arc is not very well developed, and how he has this sort of conventional villain that we've seen since Pokemon Colosseum, because they did have a similar villain like that in Colosseum, XD, X and Y, Sun and Moon. Okay, caught up. So my main issue with Sword and Shield is the story, not very well realized, and also the lack of exploration. I feel like is also should be addressed, because even though the gameplay is much more, like, they do a lot more with the gameplay in Sword and Shield, so that's really, like, I don't mind the gameplay, because I mean I enjoy it. I like a lot of the things that they did differently, and I like some of the ideas that they had with the story, but they just don't quite land because it's not very well fleshed out. That's really my main complaint with Sword and Shield. Even though I feel like Sword and Shield kind of encapsulates all the main games previously, because it feels like Pokemon Colosseum a little bit, because they have stadiums as the gyms, and that's been ever since Nintendo 64. Like, ever since the original home console Nintendo game console came out, the Nintendo 64, the Pokemon Stadium games that came out all the way back in the 90s were, Pokemon Stadium. You battled in stadiums, and they brought that back in Sword and Shield. So I really like that it has this kind of culminated kind of feel to it, because it encapsulates a lot of different aspects of not just all the previous handheld games, but also all the previous home console games, which is why there are certain gameplay mechanics from Pokemon Colosseum, like they replaced the dowsing item mechanic entirely with just having items shine on the ground, which is a mechanic straight from Colosseum and XD. So yeah, I like that. And also, another major aspect of Sword and Shield is the wild area. They finally have this really big area that you can explore, and you can Dynamax your Pokemon. That's another main battling mechanic in Sword and Shield, which feels like a combination of Z moves and Mega Evolution from the previous games in a way, because when you Gigantamax your Pokemon, they have new forms similar to Mega Evolution, but they have these new powerful moves, which is similar to the Z moves. So it's like a combination of Z moves and Mega Evolution, but at the same time it makes your Pokemon huge. So that's really the main battling mechanic in Sword and Shield, which I've grown to it. I've gotten used to it, so it's not. I used to not like it too much when I first learned about it, but after I played the games a few times, I've grown accustomed to the mechanics. So yeah, but Sword and Shield, I enjoy the games. I enjoy the gameplay. I like how when you're in the wild area, you have free camera movement. You can finally move the camera with the control stick on the right side if you're playing in handheld mode. So I really like that about Sword and Shield. And they have overworld Pokemon, wild Pokemon, which was first introduced in the previous games, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but it was much more grander. You could see the actual sizes of all the Pokemon in the wild around you, and I really liked that. that what makes Sword and Shield feel similar to other games that aren't Pokemon related. Like if you think of Legend of Zelda or Super Mario, in those games, and you kill enemies in the overworld, and that's kind of what I liked about Sword and Shield. It felt like they're finally kind of making it feel a little bit more like other games with the free camera movement in the wild area and having wild Pokemon in the overworld. So I really liked that about Pokemon Sword and Shield in a way, because they feel like not just Pokemon games, but in a way it feels a little bit like Legend of Zelda because of how big the wild area is, and I can definitely tell that the developers took influence from Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda, when they were developing the wild area for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and even like the music that plays in the wild area sounds very similar to Breath of the Wild music, and I really liked that. You can definitely tell that there's that influence there. Legend of Zelda, feel, that influence of the gameplay from that game in Sword and Shield, and I really liked that. It's just what keeps the Sword and Shield from being great games for me is the lack of story, and also, with the exception of the wild area, the lack of exploration. Because in some of the previous Pokemon games, there's a lot more to do in the cities. There's a lot more side things that you can do, and even though there are some side things that you can do in Sword and Shield, they're not. There's not as many, and even the post game, like once you're done with the main story, there is a post game, but it doesn't really, it doesn't take too long to complete. So it's like, yeah, they haven't really done much with post game content these past few years with Pokemon games, which is why they're releasing the DLC later this year for Sword and Shield. So I'm looking forward to the DLC content for Sword and Shield when those come out later this year. But of course, they're gonna have to pay for those later this year. Hopefully, they'll still come out. But yeah, so that's really all my thoughts. But another thing is that the Galar region in Sword and Shield is based on the UK, so you have people talking, like English terms like that is totally rubbish, things like that. Like I'm used to that kind of English because I watch Harry Potter. I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and a lot of the characters in Sword and Shield speak very English language from the UK, and I really like that about Sword and Shield. So I really like that aspect of Sword and Shield, and I think some of the characters in Sword and Shield are very memorable. I like the character of Leon, the champion. The characters in the game I really enjoy for the most part. It's just like the story and the lack of exploration in most of the game, except for the wild area, is just not as well developed, I guess you could say, or not as well fleshed out. So those are really my main complaints with Sword and Shield, but I do enjoy these games nonetheless. Like once again, the music is also really good. Like that's the main attraction when you play video games in general. The music. That's what makes the experience for most gamers and for me personally. And the music here, no exception. Amazing music. I really enjoy it. So, yeah, and like the Pokemon, I really like the new Pokemon, some of the new Pokemon as well. Like, I mean, not necessarily the starters though. That's another complaint I have. The main starters, their final evolutions. I guess I like Grookey's final evolution, but the other two, the fire starter and the water starter, Cinderace and Teleon, not as. They're a little too humanoid. Their final forms, which just makes them a little bit awkward, I guess. So yeah, that's really those are my main complaints with the game, and also when comparing Sword and Shield to previous games, it feels like they borrowed a lot from Pokemon Colosseum, especially with the story, but not in a good way. Yes, so that's my main issue, and I really wish they would make another sequel to Colosseum. You know, we're in this time period now where no, they're making Pokemon games on the Nintendo Switch. We're at that point in the series where they can make a sequel to Pokemon Colosseum, because that was the very first 3D Pokemon game ever. Well, not ever made, but it was the first 3D RPG Pokemon game, Pokemon Colosseum, and Sword and Shield feels similar to that older game, in certain ways. Like even the catching mechanic of catching Dynamax Pokemon in raid battles looks similar visually to snagging Shadow Pokemon in Colosseum. And another, like I've mentioned before, hidden items shine on the ground, which is a mechanic straight from Colosseum and XD. So yeah, there's that, and also the main villain, like I've said, being a conventional villain similar to Evis in Colosseum. So it's baffling to me that they still haven't made another Colosseum game. And even though I know Diamond Pearl remakes are more likely the next the next Pokemon games, I feel like, especially with the fact that they reintroduced Shadow Pokemon into Pokemon Go, that in and of itself is, you know, teasing us hardcore Pokemon fans that played Pokemon Colosseum back in 2004, were, you know, just that, based on that fact alone, it's interesting. And so far, like Sword and Shield and Pokemon Go, it just feels like they're teasing us. And that's really my main complaint with Sword and Shield, is that a lot of the game reminds me of Colosseum and XD. And that's really my little rant that I just wanted to go on a little bit briefly. Well, I talked about it for a little while actually, but yeah, that's my main rant with Sword and Shield, is that I really wish they would make another Colosseum game. But yeah, so because this is a video game, my percentage would be 80%. That's a B- if it was a movie. So that is my review for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.
Here comes a brand new world. I step into a place you've never been. Here comes a brand new